Today's video sponsor has teamed up with Assassin's Creed. We have covered zombie apocalypses from various media types over the years, but never once from music videos, stemming from Metallica's All Nightmare Long from their 2008 album Death Magnetic, a return to their thrash metal roots with lyrics and themes centered around that. Metallica have always enjoyed horror and sci-fi, back to Cliff Burton's love for H.P. Lovecraft in songs like The Thing That Should Not Be and The Call of Cthulhu, and Kirk Hammett's known love for the mediums in general. The lyrics for this song were described by James Hetfield to be inspired by the hounds of Tindalos, beasts that hunt you even in your dreams. The music video was different though, as it saw inspiration in what guitarist Kirk Hammett explained were various videos that he bought for $5 from a Russian fan, eventually watching through them with a Russian translator, although this backstory was just a flat-out lie to drum up hype about the music video. The video itself was made to mirror low-budget animation horror and live-action found footage, having much inspiration for its segments taken from 1940s experiments in the revival of organisms, a short film made on Soviet research into reviving clinically dead organisms. So what if a universe expanded on that idea? Which gets us into today's subject matter. How would a spore that crawled out from a meteor in Tunguska in the early 1900s and discovered by Russia spell doom for humanity? How would repurposing animated flesh for a Soviet New World mean you not surviving? Today, we are discussing why you wouldn't survive the Metallica zombie apocalypse, aka Soviet space spore zombies. While a zombie virus set to the music of a band's return to thrash metal roots may seem loud and in your face, you can stick to the shadows with a stealthy assault from Ezio Auditore da Firenze's collab into Raid Shadow Legends. You're not going to want to miss out on this limited time event since the man himself is entering the arena in all of his visual splendor in high cinematic quality that really makes it feel like the assassin. You could get 5 iconic assassins from the Assassin's Creed franchise: Ezio, Edward Kenway, Bayek, Basim, and Kassandra as they join the pantheon of legendary champions for a limited time. Bonus, if you play the game for 7 days during the Ezio Chase event, you can get Ezio for free. All you have to do is just log in, but you have to hurry. This is only for a short time, then Ezio and his assassin buddies go back into the vault. I personally love his addition to my team as he could throw down a variety of debuffs to weaken his enemies before piercing their defenses with precise strikes from his hidden blade. Using his arsenal of tools in the highly advanced campaign mode, dungeons, clan bosses, and the intricate PvP arena, I wish I had any one of these assassins when I first started, especially Kassandra, as she will be the first champion from the newest faction of the Argonauts, with more of them coming in future updates. You could see the fantastic graphics of their assault on both PC or mobile devices. Use them against the event dungeon antagonist Pontiff Augustin, a religious zealot who has discovered a piece of Eden in Talaria and is using it for his own gain. He is residing in the event dungeon where you can take the fight to him and earn limited time chronograph gear as well as gear from other valuable sets. Act now and sign up so you could get Tagoar, an epic from the Orc faction, and epic support champion standing strong with his majestic sword staff, leaving no fallen soldiers behind. You could get 300k silver, 1 energy refill, 10 magic brews, 1 day XP booster. On top of the free Ezio, you could get something that is valued at about $60 when you reach level 15 and get the epic champion Tayrel from the High Elves faction. Many players consider Tayrel to be the very best epic that Raid Shadow Legends has to offer, with his arsenal of high-powered debuffs suited for all occasions, alongside getting 200k silver, 1 energy refill, 1 day XP booster, and 1 skill tome epic. Reach that milestone by completing quests and challenges to level up quick and get good. Remember, 7 days nets you Ezio all for yourself starting January 8th until January 30th. Get bonus rewards for another 7 days and participate in social events, tournaments, and summon boosts to unlock other iconic assassins like Edward Kenway, Bayek, Basim, and Kassandra. Like I said, this is probably the coolest time to join just for such a sweet collab. Use my link in the description or pinned comment below, or scan the QR code on screen to download Raid and get assassinating today. dating back to June 30th, 1908 to the real-life Tunguska event where an explosion equivalent to up to 30 megatons of TNT occurred near the Podkamennaya Tunguska River in Russia, devastating the area from which it occurred, leveling 830 miles of square forest. While, at the time, only eyewitness testimonies and studies over the years could evaluate what happened, to this day it's considered probably the largest impact event to occur on Earth in our own human recorded history, second only to the Chicxulub impact that wiped out the dinosaurs. This impact is widely considered to be a meteor about the size of a 25-story building that had entered Earth's atmosphere going 25,000 miles per hour and exploded in a meteor airburst 4 to 6 miles above Earth's surface. So, not directly striking our planet and causing a crater, but still causing a hellish, basically natural nuke to go off with the after effects readily apparent. This impact was felt across the world, with even rumblings on the Richter scale going off in the United States. While it's not widely known purely because of its death toll reaching only 3 people and being within a largely remote area of Russia in the early 1900s, most of this was just under the radar for most of humanity. But there was much more to this extraterrestrial explosion that was quickly covered up by Russian government and research teams. Despite the radiant light of destruction being seen from as far as London, the world would be kept in the dark, waiting for Russia to hit the lights. Hearsay and seismograph readings were all the rest of the world knew, yet something sinister lurked from the circle of destroyed trees the asteroid disintegrated over. Decaying wildlife like deer and elk were wandering the landscape, much like the deer of today that suffer from chronic wasting disease, looking like walking dead, erratic, unnatural, and prone to violence and or fleeing. The bizarre and frankly horrifying sight led to a secret task force to determine what this biological phenomena was, to prevent any kind of pandemic from starting. Sources in and out of Russia would search for impact sites and meteoric fragments. This secret group would procure something else entirely, a discolored dust. Examination would discern that it was actually multiple clusters of spores. At first, it had been assumed that this dust was what remained of the meteor upon its destructive entry into our atmosphere. This bacterial or fungal unicellular reproductive cell was more environmentally resistant than any other spore on Earth, and that is saying something. Having survived the comet's destruction and scorching heat of its velocity through the planet's atmosphere, within ground zero of the now titled Tunguska volcano, scientists discovered a non-native species, a scorpion-like fauna that miraculously came back from the dead, or at least a hibernative state. This creature was host to a myriad of smaller life, specimens resembling brine shrimp with hooked fins under a microscope, things that should not be. These alien life were most likely housed within the spaceborne rock, much like A Quiet Place's death angels, or were dead creatures or parts of dead animals attached to the rock before its destruction. Regardless of what the scorpions and shrimp-like beasts were, it was shown that the smaller creatures were producing spores and dust found at the Tunguska event. Could it be that the brine samples in the scorpion-like animal and their spores were what caused it to awaken? Scientific studies were made with the spore. Scientists saw that when the spores were exposed to just about any organic tissue, that they would begin to reproduce rapidly, mimicking other cells they came into proximity of, much like stem cells or what they are known for in scientific and medical purposes today, where they can directly copy skin cells, nerves, muscles, and more, any part of an organic creature to reconstitute, rebuild, and or newly create. Think stem cells, but on space crack. In early human test trials, a man with a large deep cut on his arm was given a small dose of the spores on a cotton swab. In less than 8 hours after administering the concentrated spore, did the wound close up and fully heal. The advent of a spore that, applied in small doses, could miraculously heal any injury in mere hours was a major medical and scientific breakthrough, enough to cause whiplash across all communities with this knowledge. Yet its full capabilities were still beyond our understanding, especially in terms of weaponization, a spore that can mend and animate. Think, for example, how the splitworm creates a new life form from bisected parts of its own body, acting as a different life once separated. Yet, in the case of this spore, basically any biomatter it inhabits can take on this trait, not just parts that come from one body, reanimating any dead, inanimate, cut apart, or removed flesh, with clinical trials soon bearing fruit, meat, when a slab of beef began wriggling like a worm, the true nightmare of Hank Hill. If this basically steak could come to life and humans could heal, what about complete but dead life forms whose tissue and biomatter had long begun to rot and putrefy? Experimental practice runs eventually led to the first successful trial with a deceased feline who had been dead for a few weeks. Administering half a syringe of the spore into the mammal, its limbs would immediately begin to twitch and move. In just a few short minutes, its whole body would move around and operate mostly normally, like a person under anesthesia pulling teeth, even attempting to scratch and hiss at one of the nearby scientists. This was, by all measures of medical science, alive. It was alive! Humanity had discovered the means of curing death. Creeping death was nullified. The cat, named Lazarus, referencing Jesus' miracle of resurrecting another, became an icon within the small group. The image of a cat returning to life had sparked a diverging path for Russia, humanity, and the natural state of our planet. The Russians used this as propaganda to say that the spore's sacrifice of itself for the needs of others would play an integral role in the development of the USSR in 1922. Having been studied and kept under wraps through World War I and after, and exhaustively researched until 1938, when the supply of the specimens had died out alongside their only means of producing the spore. The process of reanimation was lost to those it had been used on. That is until 3 years after World War II ended in 1948. In Cheko Lake, close to the Tunguska incident, researchers discover the Tunguskan specimens buried, not trapped under ice, but under volumes of mud. Research was back on the menu as the Soviets would begin to lay plans to use this spore for their expansion and defensive efforts across the world. By 1948, the USSR was investing much more time and resources into this tightly held secret. America had shown its strength with the atomic bomb and the willingness to use it in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The United States was sure to lord over the world with such destructive potential to create the illusion of liberty and justice for all. To Russia, their relentless pursuit of capitalistic imperialism would cripple mankind, that eventually the Western powers would nuke everything to conglomerate land and power. Likewise for the Europeans allied to them. Something needed to be done. More animals were tested on. A dead frog was given a high amount of the spore to reanimate. It was then placed in a habitat with a lab rat. The amphibian went frantic and quickly attacked the rodent, choking it to death. The spores would apparently cause high levels of aggression in those it inhabited, most likely attacking anything that was not of spore-borne reincarnation, as seen with Lazarus the cat when it swiped at the scientific staff. Precautions needed to be made with this new revelation. Creating new life that immediately attacked anything nearby could easily backfire, as is the case for any zombie franchise or media where the military tries to weaponize the zombie virus. They would soon discover that the spore had a very stark weakness to barium, as the element of Ba137 would cause sporadic spore cell death. With this revelation, everything was falling into place. They knew how to exterminate the spore, and more so, how to use it. With the dust, from its applications to its weaknesses, known to the Soviets and to no one else, they had total control. For whom the bell tolls as the time to strike was impending. Nothing else matters in their pursuit against threat to their idea of a new world. Mass extraction and production of the spore from the specimens immediately went into effect, making it to where they could make an infinite supply, sealing high concentrations of the spore in disc-shaped containers. Yes, the Russians did have nuclear bombs, but nuclear annihilation was too fearsome a weapon to try and fight fire with. So biological warfare was the only way to usurp control of the worldwide power struggle and have their country become the master of puppets. Russia would soon deploy air balloons filled with these spores, electing to not have jets or helicopters dispersing the dust, both to prevent Russian casualties in the event the aircraft is spotted and to be placed at such high altitudes that the American Air Force cannot possibly reach it. While in the music video it says the height alone was enough to have the government and military just plain give up on it, a foreign unidentified balloon entering restricted airspace towards Freedom Land would be met with more resistance than that. It's not like this carrier device is as far as the Orion constellation. The US would possibly shoot it down even at that altitude, but remember, this spore was able to survive entering Earth's atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour and a hellish blast resulting from that. So some missiles or artillery won't be able to eradicate what's already coming. Regardless, the balloons would soon drop these infection discs and have them implode in the airspace above Los Angeles, California, near the Golden Gate Bridge. The spores, having been reconstituted and spread through the air, have the spore plume out in green smoke that would rapidly move across the United States of America. Much like the 2,4,5 trioxin in Return of the Living Dead, it will seep into the ground, into water supplies, into the air. Anything it can cascade across and touch, any dead organic matter it comes into contact with, will soon reanimate with nearly immediate violent aggression. There will be no escape from the spore's influence. All dead, intact or not, will rise from their graves, awaken from morgues and hospitals, springing to life, no matter what laws of nature would dictate that they shouldn't. While not explicitly stated, the zombies within the video act as any zombie would, pursuing living organisms to bite to either consume their flesh or to spread the fungi, or to spread the spore. More than likely, these bites act as the wildfire virus does in The Walking Dead, where it can kill a person once exposed through a bite or bodily fluids. Upon death, the lingering spores in the western air will have already integrated into your body and will fully activate and turn your body into a deadite when you have perished. And as with every zombie apocalypse scenario, there is the usual sad but true banter of people seeing and even falling to cannibalistic families and loved ones. This would be so blindsiding for society that many would be killed within the first few hours of the undead invasion. By the time US intelligence caught wind of this pandemic, the wind will have already spread it beyond control, beyond any kind of restraint or quarantine. No matter how much man, firepower, and resistance we throw at these monstrosities, they would simply shrug off the damage. Any part of them destroyed or dismembered will simply slowly be regenerated or create a new zombie life form acting on its own with the same violent MO. There is no killing them even if they are blown to bits. Barium is needed to kill the spores and those that it reanimates. Without knowing this, you'll be pulling the shortest straw trying to kill them all. No matter how many disposable heroes that jump in the fire, they will all just be fuel, like moth to flame. Even with drones, airstrikes, bombardments, high-power artillery, and some good old-fashioned battery to the head, they just won't die, and soldiers will simply be added to the undead army. But it's also much worse than you think. The implication of a spore that can animate any organic flesh just from exposure to it is way more expansive than what the music video depicts. We've discussed this specific topic in my Why You Wouldn't Survive the 2,4,5 Trioxin virus. I said it was a virus, but it's a chemical agent, but the fact that this can revive all kinds of animals, all kinds of fauna. In Return of the Living Dead, we saw a half-split dog and butterflies and more coming to life. The same rules would apply here. I mean, even in the music video, the first fully living being that we saw that was created by this spore was a cat. And even further back were pictures of reanimated deer and elk. Do you know how insane that implication is? That all dead and dismembered organic fauna are fair game to incorporate by the spore. There is also a plus side to all this not brought up in All Nightmare Long. To any living beings exposed to the dust, any physical wounds and ailments they suffer from could quickly be cured and healed. Meaning, in this battle of living versus dead, no matter how broken, beat, and scarred you become, as long as it's not through direct zombie contact, you will be healed in just a few hours, as if your body was hardwired to have video game levels of regeneration. But even with the advent of your new abilities, avoiding infection and getting mogged by everything coming at you is going to be insurmountable. Insects, mammals, fish, meat and processing plants, just any kind of slurry as long as it's some kind of meat, infecting what we eat and drink, attacking from every nook and cranny. Anything can reanimate and come after you. The possibilities of these spore-infected reaching and either sporing you up or killing you are basically endless. The entire Western Hemisphere connected by land will enter a dyer's eve. The luck of the American Empire would be plucked to a no-leaf clover. What could be done when every dead being was back? There's nothing that can stop the reaping of this land via mindless feral creatures. For those that are able to survive the onslaught of the dead and all meat coming to life and lock themselves down to try to stay alive, they will slowly dwindle into the frayed ends of sanity as if they were a leper messiah. Those outside the affected areas in the West will up quarantine efforts, and those allied to the United States will be pressured to offer support. Russia would offer their aid to the United States and surrounding landlocked territories like Mexico, Canada, and beyond so that they do not arouse suspicion. But they would stall sending aid as long as possible as they sat back and watched within the eye of the beholder. No one on Earth knew Russia had unleashed this nightmare on the US, and by slowing this faux aid, they were basically saying to themselves, "Ain't my bitch." Fires would swell, major American cities would crumble, prosperity in the West would revert to a wasteland riddled with moving flesh, limbs, and zombies, a set piece that looks like it was beckoned by the call of Cthulhu. Once enough time had passed, and a majority of the United States population had fallen to the biological phantom lord, Russia swiftly arrived. Using a chemical aerosol mixture of barium and arsenic, surprisingly, no cyanide in the mix. Russian planes dispersed this newly made gas nationwide, killing all living, dead, meat, and animals and more on contact because barium does cause the cells to die, possibly mixing in arsenic to also cause issues for any still living and breathing people caught in the American wasteland, leading to their suffering from ailments and potentially dying of motor breath, amidst all the other issues suffered during these events. Basically, it means if you are still alive and have stories to tell about the dead, the Russians will have arsenic dispersed out into the air to make sure you eventually die while rescue efforts are made, or you just die pretty soon. But this barium contingency that they had for the infected proved to be effective, as the entire population of the USA was wiped out in just a few weeks. From there, records indicate that cleanup of all dead would take decades to come, scouring, cleaning, and destroying both spore-ridden flesh and any evidence of the USSR's involvement with living American people, burning mountains of bodies, deploying giant robots to monitor the land for any dead or American activity. So not only are you trying to survive the zombies, basic tenets of survival, eating, sleeping, drinking, then you have to survive the arsenic in the air, but now you have to survive Russians with their giant robots scouring the land looking for you. The East would fall beneath the feet of the four horsemen of this particular zombie apocalypse: zombies, survival, poison, and Russians. 24 years passed as Russia continued to research the dead carrying the spore, acting to the rest of the world as if this was their first time encountering the disease. Studies would continue in the Krasnoyarsk Reclamation Facility, a large nuclear energy facility tasked with plutonium production specifically for weapons. Eastern countries struggled to find the cause of the outbreak, with pockets of humanity suspecting the growing Russian Empire to be behind it. The spore was dead, overwhelmed by fragments of barium and arsenic for investigators to point towards the metals as the possible cause. With no spores to point at, it was not pinned as a fungal outbreak, but a viral one. Eventually, the metal leftovers found on the bodies of the dead and the surrounding environment had the infection labeled as one name: the Metallica virus. Mother Russia excitedly believed she would be the greatest superpower on Earth, as a harvester of sorrow, having wiped out billions of lives. But the apocalypse they beset in one side of the world will have gone beyond its intended effect. Studies on the headless man would breach containment as scientists and doctors would fall victim to its assault. Through undisclosed means, the Metallica virus started to spread within the facility, festering and mutating, possibly through exposure to the plutonium housed in the same structure, turning the Krasnoyarsk reclamation facility into a damaged ink. Their machinations with the spaceborne Spore would only bring about destructive karmic retribution. The Spore was stronger now. At this point, it had exposure to human flesh and more for years, and now to radioactive material, all components to make it an SCP-Keter level threat. What happened in the US will simply be the Judas kiss to the fate of humanity. The overpowered variation of all flesh and bone coming back from the dead in all forms of animalistic life is one thing that was already busted as hell. But upgrading that with biological retention and mutations, it's game over, man. Possibly even developing a resistance to barium, the one weakness they had to make the Spore veritably immortal, and all flesh it integrates with undying. There is no way to destroy them unless you completely incinerate all the cells. Russia would soon be consumed from within itself, eaten by the beast it created, having refused to tell mankind of this otherworldly presence, of this life form's capabilities. Russia, crumbling as the Spore, would again be spread via infection vectors like bites, bodily fluids, and contamination via all forms of fauna. The Eastern world would fall promptly thereafter. Those not landlocked to Russia would have infected birds, insects, and aquatic life soon showing up to islands like Japan and Australia to ensure total capitulation to its influence. News would most likely erupt of the USSR's involvement, but punishment has already executed the motherland. There is no one there to charge for war crimes. The undead and their spores were everywhere. Nothing could kill that which it reanimated. To survive this world would mean all was lost no matter what. If you somehow come out on top, you would be nothing but a king nothing. Pockets of resistance would fight back with futility. There is no stopping this advance. Scant scientific concerns would try to find a way to stop this pandemic, but that too would fail. The only fail-safe we had, and Russia played with it for so long that weakness has now been eradicated. A subsection of humanity participated in its own screaming suicide, but the memory remains of our dominion over this small rock in space, felled by a smaller rock that came to us in a thunderous boom in 1908. While the Chicxulub impact wiped out the dinosaurs instantly, the Tunguska event would wipe us out slowly by the devices of our own arrogance. Now that we're dead, the world will simply go through the never and fade to black. Metallica has taken over the world. Nobody knows why or how, but one thing is for sure. Lars Ulrich will take down this video, and Dave Mustaine probably made the virus.
We think not.
That about wraps up this look into musical zombie mania from the titans of metal Metallica. What do you think? Some tidbits on the lore I squeezed in myself to make it more interesting. Also, I have a sort of a fun game I slid into the video. I inserted the names of quite a few Metallica songs. Do you know how many? Let me know how many you counted. Are there other cool music video stories you think I should cover in the future? Shoot me a question. Make sure to support the channel by contributing to me on Patreon as a patron, or becoming a YouTube channel member, or chipping in a buck or two over on my second channel, WSG Streams, during my weekly live streams of Left 4 Dead 2, where we play with friends and fans. It's a lot of fun. Until next time, I'm Zackass, aka WowSet Gaming. Never forget to stay happy, stay healthy, and just stay down and stay wow. Yeah.